Hi everybody. So today we're going to look at the importance of flexibility. And flexibility is a component of fitness, and it is generally one which is overlooked by most people and undervalued by most people also. So hopefully by the end of this you will have a much better idea of why you should be doing flexibility and what it's all about. So when I would have studied anatomy physiology, this is kind of the way you would have been taught it. You would have thought that the body was almost individual parts and individual muscles, but that thinking has all changed. So when we think about our body, we must think of it as one complete unit. Nothing works in isolation. And this is especially true when it comes to flexibility. So, for example, you have what they call a superficial backline. Now, what that simply means is that from the ball of our foot up through the calf, hamstrings, through the sarcotuberous ligament, and all up through the erector spinae and right to the forehead is all one unit. So you could have, if you have issues anywhere along that line, it can create problems somewhere else. So for argument's sake, if I have issues with the calf, that can create problems with a hamstring, could create problems into the hips or lower back or anything else. So this is now what they have discovered, and this connection is possible through fascia. So we're going to speak a little bit more about fascia as we go along. But as I said previously, muscles were taken in isolation, but now they've realized that it's actually all one unit. So you can see it's the same here with the superficial front line. So this happens all over your body. Again, from the feet, the whole way up through the outside of the shin, into the quads, through your hips, and right up into the neck itself. So again, any issues anywhere along that line, if muscles are tight, if they're weak, or for any other reason, it can create problems somewhere else along that chain. So the lateral lines will be the same. Again, it's from the feet. So if you have biomechanical issues, which means that maybe the foot is falling in or out, or there could be issues with the knees, that's going to create a problem somewhere along that line. And the body's going to try and compensate for that. So you can get lots of problems on that side of it as well. So we also have spiral lines. So if you take it, if we started from the hamstrings, we'd start here, run down, and they'll actually run in under the bottom of the foot, back up on the outside of the lower leg, up through that IT band, the iliotibia band. And see the way then it's crossed here, goes the whole way around the back, and then works its way back down again. So it's one complete unit. So again, if I have any rotational issues up here, you can create problems further down into your hips or anything else. Or if I'm very tight on one side, it can prevent rotation happening in the upper body. So this is why it's so important that you're thinking of your body as one unit rather than an individual part. So when we think about flexibility, we must think globally and not locally. So what that simply means is that, for example, if you had an issue with the calves, so remember the calf muscle is that big muscle on the lower leg, the back of the lower leg. And if that muscle becomes very tight, remember the muscles above it are going to be affected also. So if the calves are very tight, that probably means that the hamstrings are lengthened and weak, because if the calves are tight, that means the hamstrings are being inhibited, which means that the body is deliberately not stimulating them to contract because the calves are under so much pressure. Because you can imagine if the calves are very tight and then your hamstrings are trying to contract as well, that would make it very, very difficult to move about, and it would be extremely difficult on a person. So the body inhibits one muscle group, it makes it relax, while the other one is under so much tension. So not only would you have to lengthen the calves, but you'd also have to strengthen the hamstrings as well and recover that neural stimulation that it should have. So I've mentioned fascia already. So fascia is a connective tissue with the ability to store and communicate information across the entire body. So scientists knew for many years that fascia was in the body, but it's only recently that they've really started to understand the effect and how big a part it actually has in the body. And this is what changes everything when it comes to flexibility, because it's through the fascia that if I have an issue in one part of the body, it can create problems somewhere else. So there's 6 times the number of receptors in fascia than in muscle itself. So if the fascia is under tension, that means that the pain level will probably be even higher than if there was just an issue with the muscle itself. So fascia is playing a huge part in the body, and making sure that it stays healthy is really important. So activity has a huge effect on fascia, same as it does on muscle itself. So it's really important we're staying active and that we're making sure our flexibility is quite good. Fascia extends into our bones and are precisely designed best to resist force which a particular person places on them. So if I'm constantly slouched over a computer all day, this can have a huge effect on how the fascia will take shape. Because if I sit with the shoulder slumped forward and the chin down on the chest all day, that's kind of the position that the fascia will begin to hold. So it's really important that I'm moving on a regular basis, because fascia is meant to slide over itself. It has hyaluronic acid, which is the fluid between the fascia itself, which is allowing it to slide smoothly. But if that fluid isn't there, and it can start to dry out, and it generally dries out because of lack of movement, that creates ischemia in an area, which means ischemia just means there's a lack of blood and a lack of nutrients to the area, which can cause trigger points as well. So it's really important that we're moving on a regular basis and that we're doing our flexibility. So fascia is divided into 2 basic types. You have subcutaneous, so that connects skin, muscle and skeletal structures. So from the skin, the fascia starts there and goes directly down into the muscle and then right down into the bones themselves. So there's no part of your body that doesn't have it. Every part of your body has fascia. And so the body is constantly talking to itself, it's sending signals to itself. And remember, fascia is a big store of water as well in the body. So you also have subserous. So this lines the body's cavity. So all your organs are wrapped in fascia, and it penetrates. It's not just a covering on the outside of the organ. It covers the outside of the organ, but it also penetrates right through the organ itself. There is no part that doesn't have fascia in it. So trauma creates microbleeding that heals into scar tissues, which changes tensile force. So if we get injured, it's not just good enough to say I'll rest it and it will be okay in a while, because scar tissues can form. So if I tear a hamstring or a calf or anything else, scar tissue will form unless I do something about it. So if I go to a therapist, whether it's a physiotherapist or whoever, it's important I get to someone that can first of all encourage healing, control bleeding, and the big thing then would be to try and prevent as much scar tissue as possible, because this is interfering with everything in the body. So scar tissue interferes with communication channels, because remember we said that the fascia is a means of communication for the entire body, and if there's scar tissue in any part of it, it's affecting that communication channel and causes trigger points to develop. So I mentioned about ischemia and I said that ischemia was a lack of blood or nutrients to an area. So if a muscle becomes very tight, the blood and the nutrients can't get into the fibers themselves. It can't reach the fascia itself, and what can happen is that a fiber can become stimulated because it's not able to get energy into the muscle itself. It can become stimulated, and then it stays in that state. So it stays contracted. It's not able to relax because it needs the nutrients getting into the muscle to allow it to relax again. So this is why a trigger point can occur. And so if I'm constantly looking after myself, if I'm making sure I'm moving on a regular basis and that I'm doing my flexibility, I'm going to reduce the amount of trigger points that I have. So stretching and functional movements promote deep healing and restores proper physiological function. So I can't stress enough how important it is that we're constantly moving. We're sitting far too long every day. So we need to get up, we need to move as much as possible, and we need to do flexibility work. The flexibility work is very, very crucial to us. So this is a sample of a circuit that you could use. Now remember, when you're talking about flexibility, you could be talking about 15-20 minutes up to a half an hour if you want today. We're not looking at a couple of hours of a session, and you're looking at 2 to 3 days per week. That's kind of what you're looking at in terms of flexibility. So on this slide, you'll see the name of the exercise or the muscle group that it's working. The repetition is 5 to 10 repetitions. So like any other type of exercise, flexibility, if you're not used to it, is not something that you should just get in and start doing a whole lot of very early, because like anything else, it can create problems. So you're going to start very slowly, especially if you're not exercising at all. So if you're not exercising, I would be starting at 5 repetitions per exercise, and then gradually build that up to 10 repetitions. Now, a repetition is, if you take the first image here, so what's going to happen, that's a stretch for the calf muscle, which I said is the back of the lower leg. So the calf that's being stretched is the leg that's behind, not the one at the front. Now, what's going to happen in that, because they're all dynamic exercise, which means there's going to be movement. So from that position, you're going to come straight up onto your toe and then allow your heel to drop back down. So you're going to raise your foot or your heel up and down off the floor, and you would do that 5 times. Come right up onto your toe and then let the heel back down as low as possible. And remember, you're looking for a mild stretch. You're not looking for anything aggressive. Should feel very mild, should feel okay to do it. It shouldn't be painful at all. So you would do 5 repetitions. Someone else who's doing maybe more exercise than you could possibly start on 10 repetitions. And if I wanted, I could do 2 sets. So say I did 10 repetitions, I could rest and I could repeat that again. But that's for people who are more used to exercises, or you could build that up over a period of time. So that's when I'm talking about 5 or 10 repetitions, that's what I'm talking about. And the same would apply for each exercise. So you can see the image if you just follow what's in the image. And remember, they're not static stretching. Although the image is obviously static, there's movement all the time. So if you take number 4 here, the stretch is for the groin, so it's the inside of that right leg. So that's the stretch in that position, and then you'll stand upright and then drop back down into that position again. And again, that would be 5 to 10 repetitions, and the same applies for all of them. It's important to read just this disclaimer as well, and because as I said to you, flexibility is like any form of exercise. Start easy, gradually work your way into it, and you'll find that it'll make a huge difference to you, as long as you just take your time and let your fitness develop. Because remember, it is a component of fitness, the same as strength or aerobic fitness or anything else. So that's just a few hints and tips in terms of the exercises.
So again, we have provided all of our Sláintecare participants with additional practical resources. So we've given over the weeks home-based videos for balance training, flexibility training, strength training, and so on. just to help you to achieve those recommendations easily in the comfort and safety of your own home. If you would like to avail of those resources and you're not part of the study, that's no problem at all if you contact us. So Diane is myself, or John is our strength and conditioning specialist, and we would be happy to share those resources with you. Okay, so finally, for anyone who's interested, so we are currently running a research study titled Prime Time for Middle-Aged and Older Adults, a strength and fitness program for adults aged 50 to 80 years in Laois. And we have recruited 80 participants. They're 50 to 80 years of age. Originally, we were supposed to run this on site, which we love to do, so we get to really know everyone, and there's obviously a lot of social interaction and so on. But of course, with COVID, and because of the age group of this group, and also all of the numerous clinical conditions and injuries and so on that exist, of course they're of the most vulnerable in society at the moment, so we had to change our study design to move to online intervention, which to be fair is probably going to be the future of training interventions for this population for the immediate future anyway. So it's actually a really good opportunity to trial this. So we have participants of all clinical conditions, all abilities, visual impairments, you name it, everybody is in this program. It's an inclusive program, and that's what it was always intended. There's very little exclusion criteria here. We received ethical approval for the study from DCU, so we were delighted with that. And we worked very hard for this to be an online intervention. Okay, so we conducted our pre-program tests at the start of September, and in the interest of time, we ran a battery of tests in small groups, of course, and with all precautions taken to assess strength, fitness, balance, flexibility for physical measurements. And then we did a number of questionnaires to look at mental health, quality of life, how active people are, and a range of other measures as well. And these, of course, were actually done on site because, of course, us as testers, we need to be able to assess these variables, but all precautions were taken in terms of COVID, and all procedures were approved by the DCU Ethics Committee. Okay, so from there we have moved on to our 12-week intervention, and so what the participants do is they train twice a week with us online. So they're all trained up on Zoom, and everyone is using that twice a week to train with us. Each training session is a combination of strength work, aerobic exercise, balance, and flexibility. Because what we're finding is, even for the people who are active, they mostly focus on aerobic exercise, but as we get older, we need all of the components of fitness. So we have all of them incorporated into each training session. So they do that twice a week with us, but they also do one mini workshop with us per week. And in those, we pick a particular topic and we take them through the science behind it in a very, very practical way. And we also support these with take-home resources in the form of handouts or videos or whatever it is that suits that particular workshop. And of course, we monitor everyone weekly. We constantly call people, email people, and we do as much as we can in terms of social support as well, because that's really, really important part of training. So we, at the end of each week, then we email everyone their participant take-home resources. So they're building up a big bank of physical activity and health resources that they can use moving forward. And the purpose of these mini workshops is to teach them everything they need to know that they'll be able to maintain these behaviours in the longer term. Okay. And of course, after week 12, we will be repeating the post-program tests. This is a research study, so we will be creating a research paper in January of 2021, and we're hoping to publish that in the Irish Medical Journal, so it'll be open access for anybody who's interested to take part. And obviously, this is important to say that we were commissioned by Laois Sports Partnership to do this particular research study, and it's funded by the Sláintecare Integration Fund under Grant Agreement 21.